Hi, everyone. Here is a recap of our Leveraging AI in Education Zoom, our first meeting. I forgot to hit the record button until a few minutes into our time together. So I'm going to recap us and get us to the point where I started the recording. Thanks for watching. We opened up with some norms for our group because we have a large group of people who have probably never met before, and we just want to make sure that we are being positive, listening to one another, and just giving ideas and making sure that all voices are heard, because we value the perspectives that each and every one of you bring. So that's super important to us. We had a quick little activity that you'll find on the agenda to be able to introduce yourself and share a fun fact. We talked about our purposes, our purpose here together, and what's going on in the world of AI. What does that mean for Mesquite ISD, and what are some priorities and outcomes that we can start thinking about to move this work forward? Our icebreaker that we started off with was sharing a technology that we can't live without, that we didn't have 10 to 15 years ago. One thing that I shared was the air fryer, because it's completely transformed my leftovers game. So I hope that you are embracing and enjoying technologies that just make life a little bit more fun and easy for you. These are a few headlines that I've come across just in the past few weeks over what's going on in the world of AI and education that I wanted to share with you regarding new technology. So Arizona State University became the first university in the United States to partner with ChatGPT to provide paid ChatGPT for all staff and students. Now you can use ChatGPT without an account. I think that was actually just announced yesterday. So now the question is this going to be the Google killer? Magic School AI has now released a student-facing portion of the platform, so it's available for student use. Next, we have LA Unified. They created their own chatbot called Ed. It serves as a student advisor and a support for parents that can help them with tests, assignments, make suggestions, and even help kids cope with some non-academic things that might be going on. And then the last headline I shared is a local school district is among the first to use Gen AI in production in the United States. And that's actually us. That's Mesquite ISD. Through Family Feed that is going district-wide in the fall, we are able to use generative AI to suggest activities that families can do together with their kids based on their kids' passions and aptitudes. But what we really started with were some belief statements. So in the past 6 months, the District Strategic Design Committee, made up of teachers, admin, leaders from departments all over the district, met together and was led through some design work with Engage to Learn to develop a 3-year plan for district priorities. And one of the results of this work were these 6 belief statements that were collectively developed by everyone in the group, so dozens of people. And I'm sharing these to focus our time today and to inform the work that we have ahead of us. So what I want to pose to you is, which of these belief statements resonates with you the most? Pause and think about that. So an essential question I have for you is, do you think that we can meet these beliefs and ignore the power of artificial intelligence? And I think that gets us caught up to the actual recording.
We don't want anyone to fall behind, especially if we're in an educational establishment. So I think we do need to embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that headline about Arizona State, like, it made me wonder, man, is my daughter going to be, my daughter's a freshman in high school. Like, is she going to be ready? Does she even know about it? Well, I know she doesn't. I know, she's been in trouble for using it, to be honest. So it makes me, want to make sure she's ready if that's going to be on the table. And that's just my own kid. And so I wonder, what are the ramifications for all of our kids? And so this is where I'm going to give you a chance. I want to crowdsource your thoughts and ideas from the whole group. And so on our agenda, there is a chart, right? It looks like this. And I tried to put in names of people who responded. So if you don't see your name on the table, you can just add your name to a row down there. but I want to pose this, and Karen, can you drop this link in the chat?
Just did.
Thank you so much. I want to give us 2 minutes to answer both of these questions. So what would happen if we were to ban the use of AI and block it for everyone in Mesquite ISD? You can give me more than one answer in your cell. In fact, the more answers, the better. I also don't want you to feel pressured to not put an answer because maybe you see somebody else put the same thing. I think what that does is just say that, hey, we're on the same wavelength here. And then I also want you to think about what happens if we allow full access to AI without any strategic thinking, any planning, any teaching, right, to kids. What if we just, it's Wild West and here we go. What are the ramifications of that? So it's very much dreaming. What are our what if scenarios and what could happen? So if you'll make your way to our agenda and start answering, feel free to put bullet points in there, whatever you want to add to your cells. And I'm just going to I'm going to start that timer for us. All right, thank you guys for adding, and that's still there. You can always come back to this. And it's just a place where we can start thinking about that. Does anybody want to jump in and share something they're super passionate about with the group? That's okay too. So what I think that does is it asks a bigger question, I think, of how might we leverage AI to tailor learning experiences, not just for our students, but also how can we leverage it to help teachers during the planning process. But yes, for students. So we're not just talking about one population of student use. We also want to make sure that we're addressing what does this mean for teachers? What can teachers now do as a result of leveraging AI? So what this group is here to do is to really think about this question. And we're here to research, we're here to define, design, maybe even pilot some best practices. And then in the future, when appropriate, departments could take our recommendations and put them into action by providing guidance, maybe some professional learning in the future, and resources necessary for successful implementation. So for example, if we know that ChatGPT is now open and kids can use it, what do we do with that, right? How do we talk to kids about it? Do we teach them how to use it, or do we ignore it, right? Those are the two sides. So that's where I would love to turn to this group and say, all right, what do we do about it? Please forgive the sirens in the background, if you can hear them.
We call that action on Motley.
Yeah, action on Motley. It's always action on Motley over here at the Linda Sample Center. So there is one last activity. I know our time is coming to a close, but I would like your help in identifying some big rocks that we're going to need to consider when leveraging AI. And so if you're not familiar with that term, those are the priorities or goals that we've got to come up with basically to inform the work, right? To drive the work. So what I have here is a Jamboard. There's a Jamboard on the agenda back up here that says identify big rocks Jamboard, and Karen can drop that in the chat for us. And there's a place for you to add some sticky notes to add some thoughts. So I want to give you some examples of what big rocks are. So if you think of the company Apple, a big rock for Apple was simplifying their product line so that they could focus on innovation. If you think about Netflix, a big rock for them was shifting from mail order DVDs to streaming online. If you think of Spotify, right, instead of just streaming music for fun, like a lot of you enjoy, their big rock was being able to create personalized playlists for their end user. So those are big rocks that that they really focus their work on. So for us, if we're looking at our Jamboard, what are some outcomes or maybe some questions that we would need to address for educators, for students, and maybe even another population or maybe other thing that we don't know where it fits yet. But this is where I'm going to invite you to add some stickies to the Jamboard. If you can, let's do one idea per sticky note and then drag that to the appropriate space on the Jamboard. One thing that helps me when identifying big ideas is I like to think of, I told you essential questions, but I like to use the sentence stem, how might we? So for example, like I would add a sticky note saying, how might we prepare students to use AI safely and effectively? So what are some big thoughts or questions that we could look at?
And y'all let me know if anybody's having trouble accessing it.
I think the action's pretty close on Molly.
Well, they did pass the building, so that's good.
That is good.
It's not in the building.
Another one I think of is, what norms and guidance can we provide people to keep data safe and secure, right? Like, do our teachers know not to type in students' names and personal information into a chat GPT? I don't think anybody's ever told them not to, right? But so are those things to consider? And feel free to chew on this again and always come back to it. One of my next steps coming after this meeting would be to look at what our ideas are on this Jamboard and start grouping them to see what are some trends, what is similar, start grouping them, and maybe see where we could take some next steps into like maybe a next conversation could be, hey, let's talk about cheating and plagiarism when it comes to AI with kids. What do we do about that? How can we prevent that from happening? Or how do we, right? So we'll start taking these topics and inform our next steps. Does that make sense? Or does anybody have any questions or even thoughts? before we land the plane? All right.
I think I was going to say when it comes to security measures, I think we would probably look at it in the same way we look at our special services or related services. We just have to look at it that way. Same way we look at HIPAA law, just omit student names, ID numbers, things like that.
Yeah, there's precedent for it. Absolutely. You know, I just don't know that everybody's going to make the connection and jump, you know, that's a need. It's really easy, right, to just put things online and not think about where they go. So yeah. All right, so next steps for this group, like I said, I'm going to take our thoughts on the Jamboard. I'm also going to share this out with anybody who couldn't make it. So we're going to give them the opportunity to watch the recording, add their thoughts, and get their ideas. And then that's going to frame the work ahead and inform future meetings. I would also like to gather your feedback. I know this 30 minutes went super quickly, but on the agenda, there's a link to a feedback form because I want to make sure that you feel like your time is being used wisely, that you're giving. So if you could fill out that feedback form just for us to make sure that that we're doing okay. And if you have any advice on what we can do differently, we would love that feedback. I would like to plan to meet in 2 to 3 weeks. I know it's kind of strange with testing coming up, so I think that I'll probably send out another doodle poll and maybe even try a different day of the week just to get maybe more people in who couldn't join us this first time. What the commitment looks like just between now and the end of the school year is maybe touching base every 2 to 3 weeks. Which we don't have a lot of weeks left, right? So there might be some soft check-ins of maybe some asynchronous things that I might have you add thoughts to or capture questions. And that's really what we're looking at through this school year and see where this work takes us as AI is continuing to iterate, right? And be more accessible and as we do more with it. So I want to really thank you for your time and for joining us. If any of you want to stick around and ask questions or share more thoughts or have more conversation, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, you're free to go and I will touch base with a recap in the recording that I started late on.
Thank you. I just had one question, if you don't mind answering. So overall, what is Ms. Skeet hoping to accomplish with our meetings? Because I love the feedback, I like the collaboration, but ultimately, what do we want to do with all of our information in our meetings?
So I think there's not a defined answer right now. What we know is that there is a need to help kids and inform teachers to make sure that we are using this technology safely and appropriately because the access is already out there for people. And we need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to provide that guidance and that training that might be necessary to leverage it effectively in a positive manner. Because they're honestly, in the past several months, I feel like there's been more negative stories than there have positive stories when it comes to artificial intelligence, with what kids have been doing with it. Some scary things that have been happening that people have been doing with it. And so I want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to avoid those situations. Karen, what would you add?
What I would say is that as a district, we have not really given direction to our teachers in terms of what their use of AI can and should be, what their relationship with AI should be when regarding guiding students with their work. And it's time for us to do that. You know, we can't wait any longer. And what we don't want to do as district folks is to tell you, here's what it should look like and here's how it's going to be. What we want to make sure that we're doing is including as many teacher voices as will be a part of this with us, and as well as our friends over in teaching and learning. Like, we want all the voices who need to be part of this conversation to drive the norms that we're going to set as a district as we try to navigate this very new uncharted territory.
Yeah, I kind of have a question with AI on the rise. Do we feel that, a lot of these star materials, even potentially star tests, are going to be eventually generated by AI? And is there a way that we can perhaps predict, what teaks to focus on per subject by loading in like frequency charts and searching for patterns? Is that something, that is even ethical to do?
But we study the frequency now, right, guys?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I sure hope it's ethical, because that's what we do, in our role now, as we look for those patterns. I call them breadcrumbs that Star leaves behind, and we certainly teach all the teaks, but we emphasize the high priority ones. And so I think that, I think certainly AI could be used to do that. I think we would always want to not just trust it at face value, but to go and check that with, okay, what does the department say? Is this what we discussed it in PLC? This is what AI said. Is this what we think is true as a group? Are we seeing those trends and patterns too? And so I think it necessarily wouldn't be the end all be all, but it certainly could be another tool used in predicting those patterns and trends.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I know, Brandon, you're talking in social studies, so it's not always as clean in our lane, but there are companies that are definitely digging in that way. I know Loman is one that kind of looks at our frequency. It just, man, with our range of things that our teaks can be about, it's not as clean a lane for AI the same way that other areas are. But I mean, there are some patterns I know that you always can see, that you recognize. But as like there's a million ways to cut some of our teaks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways for popular sovereignty to be tested. So
yeah.
People power. But you know what? It makes you wonder, could AI do it better? Like, could it do it faster? Could it, and if it could do that for us, imagine what we might be able to do with that information, working for us. We've been looking at technology, there's AI technology out there that it's not just looking at text, right? It can look at images, it can look at video, it can look at, it's multimodal artificial intelligence. And if the AI can read, say, we've been testing it with reading release star questions, what could it then do for us, given that information? So it's really exciting to see what it could do. But that's what kind of makes it scary too, is that we don't know the full extent of it.
Yeah, because I've been really looking at the Loman's frequency chart this year, and with this past 2 years and the Star 2.0 and all the different trends and the ways they're asking questions, I think there could be some value in terms of AI recognizing some of this supporting vocabulary that might be trending across, different tests, and could help us with our supporting vocabulary that we use for instructions as they see. I feel like every STAR test I see a word, I'm like, well, yeah, I didn't teach that word. It's not necessarily a teak, but it's a high academic word within a question that'll catch a student up. So, I definitely think that is something that could be interesting and helpful in the future, just as we kind of evolve and grow.
And I think it's important to ask those questions too. We know that they're using artificial intelligence to grade and score a lot of these tests across the nation, right? And I know that there's ethical questions about that. So it's definitely something to follow and consider.
oh yeah, ask Bailey about that. That'd be a long conversation about
I bet.
grading some elementary stuff.
Yes.
Well, y'all know I always stick around and ask lots of questions, for better or worse, but I wanted to thank you for your time and for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Yeah.
Julia, did you want to ask your question, or did you want to send it later?
Yeah, I just emailed Ty because it's not really about, I didn't know if it was gonna be like a lot of people are gonna stay back or not.
I got
So
you.
I emailed her, but thank you.
Julia, do you think it'd be something worth the group discussing, or is it not worth?
No, because it's a tangent, but like, whenever you see somebody, you're like, oh, I have a question I need to ask
okay.
you.
All right. Well, if y'all don't have any other thoughts or questions, we'll say see you for the day. And again, I'll follow up and look forward to hearing from you guys again.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
y'all.
you.